roughly about here. And the first part that we're going to be modeling is the entire terrain, including these mountains on the horizon here, and most of these buildings, at least in their very rough form. Remember, what we're doing is we're creating just a pretty basic environment model to show what is surrounding our project, so that we can get a rough idea. We don't really need to go into too much detail to go and show every building with every height. So what we want to do now is to just find information online or wherever we can source it from, so that we can collect the info such as contours and images to put together what we're looking at. So the first thing I love to do is to find reference images of the site. And here I'm just going to click through a couple that I've been looking at just to get to know what the surroundings look like. We can see that we're in a bay area. We know that we're dealing with water, we're dealing with mountains, we've got a couple of boats, plenty of buildings. So we are going to try to recreate as much of that. Here we're looking at an older map, and I've been looking for contours as well, since that is going to be a very important part of what we need. Once you get a fairly good idea of what your site looks like, you will then start by going into Photoshop and getting together the contour map. This one I found online. I managed to get a relatively high resolution file, but in your case you will hopefully be able to ask the architects or the clients to be able to provide you with this information. It'll either come in CAD format, that is perfect, but if not, you will have to find it yourself. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to be using this JPEG contour file and manipulating it to, first of all, get our contours in AutoCAD. And second of all, we're going to be using it to generate the entire site map that we are going to use as a texture in 3ds Max. So to get started, the first thing we want to do is we want to use this contour map to define exactly how big our site model is going to be. Now, we know that the site itself is roughly in this area here. And just to make things easy for ourselves, let's rotate this file so that we have this road being horizontal. That'll allow us, at least in our modeling, to keep everything aligned with X and Y. So we're going to go into image rotation, arbitrary, and I've worked this out before, is we're going to be rotating at 19 degrees clockwise. And that allows us to get this area. I think we need to go back a little bit. So we're just going to manipulate it manually, and we're going to get that to line up, basically. I know this can be quite tricky if the files are large, and sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. And just to make things easier, we can go Control R and we can slide down a guide to use as a reference, so that when we zoom in, we can start to rotate our file and we can get that alignment to be correct. Right, let's say for our sake that this is good enough. You can keep tweaking it if you like. Then the second part is to define our zone of where the site model will be. In my case, what we're going to do is we're going to simplify things quite a bit. We're going to tell ourselves that we're going to make a site model which is perfectly square, and then we're going to divide that site model horizontally 4 times and vertically 4 times. So first of all, we're going to recrop this so that we have a perfect square. Just holding down the Shift key and the crop tool. And let's say we're happy with that. You can obviously tweak it from the different sides. And once you're happy, you crop it. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to resize this so that we have quite a large file size, texture size to add our work to. So what I'm going to do is we go to your image and your image size, and then we're going to increase this to 8000 by 8000 pixels. Now please keep in mind that the computer I'm using is slightly older, and I'm doing this for a reason. Is the point of this tutorial is to show you how to create relatively complex models on any computer. So the idea is that we're creating a lot of geometry, quite a big size model, and we're going to be doing it on a relatively simple computer with two cores, pretty much 32-bit operating system and 3 gigs of effective RAM, which means that I'm sure that everybody here will have a system more performant than this, which is the point. So the next thing we want to do is we want to divide our sitemap, which will become our sitemap, into our 16 blocks. Now what we're going to do, since we know that we have 8,000 by 8,000 pixels, we can change our ruler to pixels to make it a little bit easier, so 8,000. We can then go and add our guides. So we're going to add a new guide at horizontally, it's not vertically, so we do 2,000 pixels, get one there, and then we're just going to repeat this 4,000 pixels, and then we'll do this a few more times. 6,000 pixels, and then we go across and we do the same thing horizontally. So 2,000, $4,000, and the last one I'm going to do at 6,000. Right, so what this is showing us right now is how our site mesh is going to be split up. The reason why we're splitting it up is for 2 reasons. First of all, it allows our texture sizes to be much smaller if you don't have 32 or 64 gigs of RAM to run the model. And second of all, it allows our site mesh in each case to be slightly smaller. It means that you can have more polys and smaller objects to work with. It's just a way that I like to optimize things to keep each object in the scene relatively small. Now, one thing that you may want to tweak at this point is we know that the site is here, and I like to have the site pretty much in the middle of one of these squares. So let's say in this case I'm going to retweak it just to line up there, so that when we build our site, it's roughly in the middle of this patch. Next thing what we can do is we can just flatten that, and we can just recrop it so that the image is nice and neat. Right, so at this point, it is a good idea to start looking for site images to overlay onto this map. What I have done, because of limited resources, I've gone to Google Maps and I've done screenshots of each little part, and I've basically compiled that all together. You can, of course, ask your client if they have any high-resolution aerial images. I have used some in the past. They are very, very helpful so that you don't have to do what I've done. But since we're doing it the easy way, or the simple way, we can go to Google Maps and basically do these type of screenshots. Now from that, you then crop out what you don't need. And here's the hard part, is you need to put that all together and basically create your entire map this way. Now, of course, this is going to be rotated differently, scaled differently. So what I suggest is that when you do your screenshots is that you don't zoom in and out when you do your screenshots. You just pan across so that they're all at the same scale, so that once you pull them across, they all just have to be realigned like a puzzle, put together, merged, and then rotated to fit. Now, of course, this is quite time consuming, so I'm going to fast forward through this video, and we're going to come back once this entire image is complete, and then I will show you how we can continue from there. So just to recap, in this first section, what we've done is we've gotten to know the site. We've found a contour map that we've brought into Photoshop, and we've started to search for our site aerial maps that we are now composing and aligning with our contour map, so that we basically have that 4x4 grid